And that problem is true in China and it's true here. We call it the desire for inclusive growth as an organizing idea, and the Chinese call it building harmonious society. It's the same. Harmonious society is a code word for recognizing income inequalities in China. And inclusive growth is our code word for recognizing we are creating a society with tremendous income inequalities. So I thought it might be useful for us to ask the question, when we talk about inclusive growth, what do we really mean? Because I find that in the last year, there has been a lot of discussion of inclusive growth, but I'm yet to see a common definition of what it is. So I look at the Gini coefficient, which is normally used by economists, to look at income inequalities. United States is reasonably unequal. But I wanted to look at what China did. China was very equal. Looks like Finland. But unfortunately, everybody was poor. That is not a good start. To say everybody's poor, therefore we are equal is not a good idea. So let's not go back to where India was before. We can make one way of solving the inequality problem is to make everybody poor again. That would be unacceptable, I think. India has also moved in terms of income inequality. Brazil has always been there, very unequal society, and so is Malaysia. And every one of them are deeply concerned about this problem. But if this is all they had to deal with, I think there is a way out. You can ask the question, why the income inequality discussion is becoming very prominent in China and India, and I think in the current elections in the United States, it's going to be a debate in the United States as well. You already can see the Democratic platform dealing with that issue. But if you add two more pieces of information, GDP per capita is $43,000 in the United States, $7,600 in China. India is the lowest of the group. So we have great income inequality, very low per capita income, absolutely the lowest in human resource development or human development index. Out of 177, we are in 121. And corruption ranking, we are trying to be on par with China and Brazil. I like to pose the question. When we talk about creating a society which is inclusive, which one of these numbers do we want to manage? Because that's a question, because we have very different solutions depending on what you want to manage. It's not one thing that you want to manage. So I asked the question, when we talk about inclusive growth in India, do we mean we are going to eliminate abject poverty? Do we mean we are going to reduce income inequalities? Or do we mean we are going to eliminate unequal access to opportunities, change lifestyle inequalities? What do I mean by lifestyle inequalities? Cell phone is a fascinating example for me. I can have a cell phone even if I'm very poor. You can have a cell phone. The stuff inside is the same. You can buy a fancy one for $500. I can buy one for nothing as long as I get a prepaid card. Both of us have the same lifestyle, but what we wear is different. Everybody has a watch. One can have a $50,000 watch, another can have a $5,000 watch. Both have the same. Our question should be, do we have to reduce lifestyle inequalities in India rather than just income inequalities? Or we can say, reduce inequalities of choice. Should every Indian have the same level of choice? And it goes straight to our public policy on whether we should decide in Delhi what choices should poor people make in their lives. Or should it be the choice of local communities to decide what they will accept and what choices are relevant for them? Or reducing inequalities in the share of voice. So when we talk about inclusive growth, at least maybe all of you may be totally clear which one of those 6 things we are talking about. It's not clear to outsiders. Let me stop here for a minute. Is this an issue for us to debate? And I like to raise this and table this as an issue. If you don't know exactly what inclusive growth means, Our solutions can differ dramatically across political parties and across bureaucrats, across agencies of the government, because we are all trying to solve this problem called inclusive growth. Each one has our own definition of what it is. So maybe it's a good idea to say, this is what we're trying to solve. I said, if you have one way of thinking about it, you can say redistribution of wealth is a solution. Another way of thinking about the same issue is, it is the wealth creation, not redistribution of limited resources. We can also say public policy focus is what is required. That is what you do when you want to redistribute wealth. Entrepreneurship and market forces is what you focus on if you want to create wealth. Very seldom can public policy create wealth. It can create the conditions for wealth creation, but it does not create wealth. It redistributes wealth. And that is perfectly fine. That's part of what the policy should be. But I think we ought to ask the question, and we can't find the answer unless we say, what do we mean by inclusive growth? Now, having said that, I thought I should tell you what my biases are. I much rather move people out of abject poverty very rapidly. That's number one. I much rather create income mobility, which is opportunities for moving up in the economic ladder and creating hope. If we can do those two things well, income inequality will not disappear, but it can be managed. Because income inequality becomes a major bone of contention when people have no hope, when people do not see opportunities for changing their lives from one economic level of opportunity to another. So my personal preference would be 1 and 3, not only focus on 2. And I think if you only focus on 2, you can only use public policy instruments to reduce income disparities by taxing the very rich. We have done that before, and I don't think that's an easy answer to that problem. But 1 and 3 requires imagination and innovation, and I'll come to that. So before I get into the depth of what I want to say, I want to lay bare my key assumptions and my thesis. My key assumption, starting assumption, is the antidote to poverty and inequality is wealth creation and growth. If we do not create wealth, we cannot deal with poverty. It's obvious at one level. Poverty is the antithesis of wealth. Therefore, if you want to deal with poverty, you have to create wealth. But wealth creation and growth can come only through entrepreneurship and innovation. So we need to ask, what are the preconditions for entrepreneurial drive and for wealth creation? But entrepreneurship can only work when you have good governance and reduced transaction costs in our society. And that's fairly obvious. And good governance can only come when you have shared goals. And I recognize coalition politics does not allow for shared goals. But we have to have shared goals, and we have to ask, how do we create shared goals in a multi-party system? And the political will to solve persistent problems. I do not know of any other country where everybody knows what the problem is, everybody knows what the solution is, and nobody has the political will to do something. And I know it's a harsh statement, and therefore that's the reason why I got the award before I start. Because we have to come to terms with this issue. And I believe that 1 and 2 are easy to accept. Steps 3 and 4 are not so easy to accept. And 3 and 4 holds the key for sustained growth and sustained wealth creation. And that can be shown beyond any doubt. So what do I want all of us to do? At least for the next 45 minutes, I want you to think of the poor not as an intractable problem, not the concern of business. That has been the traditional way of thinking. Just mentally jump over the fence, just for 45 minutes. That's all I ask you to do. Just imagine the poor as one who represents the new opportunity. Even if for a moment you think of the poor as an opportunity, either because you're a moral